Nobody's gonna watch this. Doesn't matter what intro I do. Nobody's gonna watch this. Nobody cares about this movie.
Well, that was a movie.
Hello and welcome back to Simon's Rants. I'm Simon, and today I'm giving my first thoughts on Freud's Last Session, which is starring Anthony Hopkins as Sigmund Freud and Matthew Goode as C.S. Lewis. It was written and directed by Matt Brown, and it's based off of a stage play. And that stage play is apparently fictional. Granted, I don't think anybody tricked me into thinking this. I just assumed that this was based off of a true story. But as the credits are about to roll at the end of this movie, it actually points out that nobody actually knows if this meeting ever took place. Some people believe it did, but nobody actually knows that. So, kind of puts into perspective this whole movie and the arguments that take place. Because in case you don't know what this movie's about, it is detailing the possible meeting between C.S. Lewis and Sigmund Freud as they debate the existence of God mere weeks before Freud's death. And, yeah, I'll get it out of the way. The debates are a joke. They're terrible. It's terribly written. It's kind of just like, I've never been a huge fan of C.S. Lewis. A lot of his arguments, a lot of his debates, I never thought carried a whole lot of weight to them, and I thought were kind of cheesy, but granted, that's also because of how much they were repeated in my childhood. You know, growing up in a Christian atmosphere, people are always using his arguments because they were thought of so highly, and so it makes sense that he would be using these same cheesy arguments years before they were considered cheesy and old. So I get it. But this movie doesn't play to the fact that these are supposed to be two intellectual giants of our era. It instead boils it down to two emotional men arguing emotionally. You know, it's like they're supposed to have intellectual debates. They're supposed to be philosophers and scientists and doctors, but instead they're just arguing and bickering. And granted, they are very polite to each other for the most part, but their debates, like I said, are emotionally based. There's very little intellectualism being used in the way that they're debating. And for me, I was very curious to see and hear these arguments and these debates because I'm somebody that has been in these kind of debates frequently, and I love intellectualism, and I love hearing smart people say smart things. I really enjoy that, but it wasn't that. From C.S. Lewis's perspective, a lot of his arguments were silly and stupid. I mean, there's like multiple points where Freud's character is saying like a passing phrase like thank God or God willing or whatever he would say, and it was like C.S. Lewis would be like, oh, you said God, haha, and it's like that's silly. That's so silly. That's so stupid. That's not a worthy thing to say. That's not a worthy debate. And I get some of it was supposed to be funny and a joke, but the debates all were that, where it was silly and stupid and, like I said, emotionally based, emotionally driven, not intellectual whatsoever. And then from Freud, I'll admit a lot of the debates, a lot of the arguments were better, but they were very rarely finished. They would allow him to start making a point, a good point, a valid point, and then steer clear of it, and he wouldn't finish, or they would get distracted talking about something else, or a minor point, a minor detail in what he said would completely derail the conversation. And it's like, it was sickening. It was so frustrating because I wanted to hear these characters, these people, have intelligent conversations about this. And there was very little intelligence said. There was a couple of interesting philosophical moments that were referenced near the end of the movie, and I enjoyed those, but it was few and far between. I mean, the movie starts out quoting a fake Einstein quote by referencing Einstein as supposedly having said, like, the proof of insanity is to try something a million times expecting a different result, which is not an actual Einstein quote. It's often said to have been said by him, but actually wasn't. And these are people that lived at the same time quoting whoever said that in actuality years later. And that's so frustrating to hear people giving brilliant performances, by the way. Anthony Hopkins is always brilliant, except for maybe Thor. He's always brilliant, and instead of having dialogue worthy of that performance, he's saying something as stupid and as inaccurate as that, which is just a joke. Granted, it did lead to a good line where they said, therefore, the most sane thing is to be willing to change your mind, which I did really like. I loved that line. I love that theory, that philosophy of that line. But like I said, it's few and far between. And most of it is just silly. I think the best part is the summation of everything, which is like, no matter how intelligent you are, you're just gonna kind of believe what you want to believe. You are a product of how you were raised and the events that happened to you. That's kind of what Freud is trying to get across, and he's willfully admitting that, like, he's got bias, he's ignorant in some areas and a lot of stuff, and I was glad that they at least made him admit that. C.S. Lewis's character would not admit that to save his life, and it was so frustrating because there was a point where Freud is asking him questions and C.S. Lewis is like, well, I don't want to talk about that, that's private. And Freud goes, well, that's fine, because I find it much more interesting, the questions that people aren't willing to answer. And then later, C.S. Lewis is asking him some tough questions. And then goes, haha, see, I find it much more interesting what questions people don't want to answer. But it's like, well, Freud answered all of the questions. He answered all of them, even the uncomfortable ones, because that's how a man of science behaves. And so it was just frustrating because it was very sloppily done. Like, at points I thought it was incredibly biased towards C.S. Lewis, where it's like his arguments were supposedly winning or stumping Freud, but they were too stupid to stump a fifth grader. Meanwhile, at different points it switched back the other direction. So, like the question that stumped C.S. Lewis was, if God is good, why do bad things happen? And C.S. Lewis was like, man, I don't know. And it's like, C.S. Lewis has talked extensively about that, and has pretty much every Christian has a firm belief on why bad things happen to good people. Like, that's not a complex question. That's something people think is complex, but it's not actually hard to come up with an answer to that. So it's like, that's the question that stumped him. So it was just, it didn't sound like a debate between two intellectual people. It sounded like an awfully scripted conversation between the writer and himself. Like, it didn't sound like two intelligent people. It didn't even sound like two unintelligent people. It sounded like one person that didn't know how to write characters as intelligent. It was very frustrating to watch, very disappointing, very distracted. I mean, I was fine with the flashbacks. They did a lot of flashbacks to show why they thought the way they did. We got to see C.S. Lewis interact with Tolkien a little bit, which was fun, but we got so distracted with, like, subplots about Sigmund Freud's daughter, Anna. We see her going about her day and doing all of her things, and it was like she was completely irrelevant to the plot. She didn't matter at all, and I guess you could say, well, it showed things about Freud, but I mean, nothing that we didn't already get to see anyway, and we didn't need to go see her at lectures. And there was a really, really, really stupid conversation that she had between, like, herself and I guess her boss or whatever, where she was leaving a lecture in the middle and he's like, taking care of your parents in their old age isn't a virtue. It shows that you are dependent upon them. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? I don't care if you're a psychoanalyst. I don't care what you do for a living. If you have to leave work to take care of your parents, that doesn't make you codependent. That doesn't make you a bad person. That was such a dumb thing. Once again, somebody clearly not intelligent trying to write intelligent dialogue that doesn't work. And so, very frustrating movie, very disappointing. It makes sense why nobody's talking about it, because it's just simply not well made. It looks cheap. I guess some of the cinematography was good. Like I said, some of the acting is very good, but the writing is bad, the directing is uninspired, and the movie just feels empty and pointless. Like, I didn't really gain anything from this. Like I said, the debates in this were something that, like, I would have had in high school or middle school as a kid. They weren't intelligent at all or educated at all. It was just nothing. Like, there was no reason that this had to be Freud and C.S. Lewis. It could have been any Christian movie about two high schoolers. Like, we didn't need two great minds of our time talking about this stuff. It was just bland and frustrating with how unintelligent it was. So, you can skip this one. You probably did anyway. Most of you probably didn't even know what this video is not going to get any views. And whoever started this video isn't probably going to finish it either. So if you're one of like the 5 people that are actually watching this all the way through, thank you. I appreciate your view. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, all of that. I am back on YouTube after my break, sort of. My copyright strikes have not expired yet, so I'm still kind of slowly easing back into this. But February is going to be a busy month, so I want to get a couple of videos in before the festival and stuff. So I'm back. Good to be back. Hope you enjoyed this video. All 2 of you. Thanks for watching. Bye.